The forest was still at 7:15 a.m. A low fog clung to the ground like a thin veil, softening the edges of the trees and muting the crunch of boots on damp pine needles. Riley Quinn moved slowly, deliberately, her breath visible in the cool mountain air. She didn't speak, didn't hum, didn't fill the silence. She let the wilderness do what it did best, breathe without being watched. Valor padded beside her, lean and steady, his ears flicking at the sound of a distant squirrel or shifting brush. He didn't bark, he didn't stray. They were a pair that moved in practiced rhythm. No leash, no commands, just quiet trust. This stretch of the Cascades was steep, remote, not marked on most hiking maps. That was part of the reason Riley came here. No one asked questions. No one recognized her. She carried a small weatherproof notebook, scribbling notes on bird migrations and tree health as part of a conservation survey she'd volunteered for months ago. It gave her a reason to be out here. But the real reason never made it to paper. The climb grew steeper, the fog thickening. Then, halfway through a narrow pass between two boulders, Valor stopped. His body went rigid. Riley followed his line of sight. Something unnatural jutted from the hillside up ahead. She stepped closer, the air holding still around her. What she first thought was rock caught the light differently. It was metal, weather-worn, paint faded, but unmistakable. The tail section of a T-38 Talon. She knew that shape, the sharp angles, the twin rudders. There were no signs of impact, no scorched trees, no shattered pieces spread across the ground. The aircraft looked placed, not wrecked, like someone had set it there and covered it with time. Riley crouched slowly, hand brushing the moss at the base of the tail. Her eyes narrowed, scanning for details without reaching conclusions. Valor stayed quiet, but close. Nothing about this felt accidental. And though Riley didn't know what they'd just found, part of her already knew it wasn't going to stay buried much longer. Riley circled wide before closing in. Her boots moved soundlessly through the wet moss and pine needles as Valor kept pace. Head low, eyes scanning. The aircraft sat at an odd angle, one wing slightly buried beneath a slide of loose rock. She stopped just inside the tree line, taking in the full shape. It was definitely a T-38 Talon, a sleek, twin-engine trainer, light gray and barely weathered, the kind of jet that usually never flies alone. This one hadn't flown anywhere in a long time. There was no burn pattern, no torn metal. The landing gear was down, fully extended, perfectly intact. No oil, no smoke, no broken canopy. It didn't crash. It didn't emergency land. Someone had put it here, quietly, like they didn't want anyone to notice. Her stance changed, subtly, shoulders back, feet steady. Her breathing slowed, curiosity faded, training kicked in. She approached with purpose now, scanning for tripwires, for irregular shadows, for anything that felt out of place. The canopy wasn't fully sealed. She reached for it, checking the frame before lifting it just enough to slide her body halfway inside. It smelled like metal and mildew. No rot, no blood. On the seat, a folded flight map stuck out from behind the cushion. She pulled it free. High-altitude corridors, fuel checkpoints, and 3 hand-drawn circles near restricted airspace. She didn't recognize the pattern, but it wasn't standard. Her hand paused at the console. Wedged just above the throttle was a laminated ID. Captain L.I. Cole, United States Air Force. The photo was clear, name-centered. The card was pristine. He wasn't someone who'd gone down in a fireball. He'd been here, alive, careful. A single note had been folded beneath the card, weather-stained. The ink faded. Just 3 words written in tight, blocky letters. Don't trust them. She froze. A flicker crossed her eyes. Recognition. Not of the name, but something behind it She didn't speak, just pulled back. On instinct, she slid her multi-tool along the base of the pilot's seat. The screws gave easily. A panel popped loose, revealing a narrow compartment lined with foam. Inside was a secured solid-state drive, a torn emergency survival push, and a tactical notebook with the middle pages missing. The drive had no markings. The gear was packed with care, not in panic. Someone had time. Someone meant to come back, but they didn't. And Riley suddenly understood she hadn't found a wreck. She'd found a message, one meant for someone who could read it. Her hands were steady, but something behind her eyes flickered again. Not fear, memory. Riley stood just outside the tree line, her hands steady as she keyed the mic on her PRC 152. She kept her voice low, almost casual, calling in a routine check to a ranger station she'd used before. The screen showed full signal strength. The reply never came, just static. Clean and constant. No clicks. No breaks. No voice on the other end. She switched to a secondary frequency. Then a third. Nothing changed. Valor shifted beside her. Not pacing, but watching. Still. Alert. She moved back to the aircraft, unclipping the panel near the tail and activating the ELT beacon built into the fuselage. The small light turned green. It should have triggered an alert across 3 different monitoring stations. She waited. 10 seconds. 20. Nothing. No rotor sounds in the distance. No change in the sky. No birds. Either. Her satellite phone was the last backup. She powered it on, stepped clear of the trees, and turned her face upward toward an open patch of sky. Blue. Unbroken. No clouds. No reason for interference. Still, no signal. She didn't curse. Didn't panic. She just lowered the device and clipped it back onto her vest. 1 detail was a glitch. 2. Bad luck. But this was intentional. Valor's ears folded back. His eyes were locked on the ridge. Riley didn't ask what he heard. She didn't need to. His stillness told her everything. They weren't alone. She moved quickly but silently, returning to the aircraft long enough to snap high-resolution photos. Panel IDs, coordinates, cockpit contents. Then she powered down every device, buried the ELT under loose stone, and pulled a laminated map from her cargo pocket. She didn't head back the way she came. Instead, she angled toward higher elevation, harder to reach, better sight lines, fewer entry points. As they climbed, the forest felt different, heavier. No wind, no birds. Like the trees had gone still to listen, Riley didn't look back. She didn't need to. Someone already knew she'd found the jet. The question now wasn't if they'd come, it was how close they already were. Riley and Valor reached a rocky outcrop overlooking the narrow valley, the trees thinning enough to give her a clear line of sight in every direction. She sat, knees drawn up, and placed the SSD drive carefully on a flat stone. The ruggedized decryptor she carried clicked softly as she powered it on. Green lights blinked in sequence, the machine working through layers of encryption designed for a trained operator with clearance far beyond hers. She exhaled slowly, focusing on the rhythm of the device, the soft whir of its cooling fan. Valor lay beside her, head resting on his paws, eyes scanning the tree line. The first video played, grainy but clear. Captain Ellie Cole's face appeared tired and lined, a familiar sharpness around his eyes. His voice was calm, professional, detailing standard mission briefings, flight checks, routine maintenance issues. Nothing unusual. Riley allowed herself a moment to just watch, the hum of the decryptor filling the silence. Then the logs changed. Cole began to speak of Project Icarus, a classified program. His tone was measured but carried a growing unease. The device, he explained, was a suppression weapon using ultrasonic pressure waves, designed to incapacitate or eliminate personnel without damaging structures, leaving intelligence and property intact. Riley's fingers brushed the drive lightly, reading through his notes displayed on the screen, realizing the potential consequences in the wrong hands. This wasn't theoretical. This was active, operational. The later recordings revealed more. Cole described orders to test Icarus at a remote compound overseas, only to discover the area was populated. The civilians were unarmed, unaware. He detailed the consequences with controlled horror. The technical accuracy of the system paired with a raw acknowledgement of human cost, he listed those responsible, and the intent to bring the truth to light. The final clip showed him exhausted, haunted, stating he would not comply with attempts to hide the results. He ended with a warning that sent a chill through Riley if anyone was watching. They should know he had been buried along with his own jet. Riley's chest tightened. Memories she had pushed down for years surfaced. Imagining the accident that had claimed him, Valor nudged her hand softly. She didn't break, but her breath caught, muscle tensing. Her grip on the drive strengthened, knuckles whitening. The forest around her was quiet, indifferent to the moment. But the weight of the revelation pressed down. She felt the mix of sorrow and resolve. Eli had tried to stop something terrible, and now she was the one left to finish it. Her posture straightened, shoulders squared. Valor's presence grounded her, and in that silence, determination replaced grief. The path forward was clear. Night had settled over the Cascade Mountains by 8:15 p.m. The fog had thickened, swirling around the low boughs of the trees, muffling sound and distorting shadows. Riley moved deliberately. Valor, a silent shadow beside her, ears forward, every muscle coiled in readiness. She scanned the forest floor, noticing subtle irregularities, twigs bent the wrong way, leaves unnaturally flattened. The expected sounds of night wildlife replaced by a tense stillness. Something was watching. A soft buzz cut through the quiet. Riley froze, eyes tracking the small, flickering silhouettes overhead. RQ-11 Raven drones glinted faintly in the pale moonlight, their propellers almost inaudible but unmistakable to trained ears. She shifted position, hugging the contours of a ridge, and slipped the thermal shielding poncho from her pack. Valor mirrored her motion, moving fluidly beside her as she activated a practice sequence of counter-surveillance tactics. Heat pads were scattered in decoy positions, mimicking their thermal signatures. The SSD drive was carefully placed inside a camouflaged rock cache she had used during earlier survival exercises, completely concealed from casual observers or scanning equipment. Within 45 minutes, she caught movement low among the trees, black-clad figures advancing with precise, coordinated steps. No unipatch, no rank insignia, no identifiers at all. They were disciplined, moving in tight formations, using hand signals and stacked approaches as if conducting a rehearsed operation, not standard military personnel. Riley assessed quickly deniable assets, possibly contractors or rogue internal units tasked with retrieval. They weren't looking for a plane, they were looking for her. Every step forward was calculated. Riley relied on deep terrain knowledge, moving through depressions and rocky outcrops, letting Valor guide her when visibility was limited. A snapped branch underfoot could betray them. A shift in the wind carried their scent toward the predators. At one point, she dropped into a shallow pond to mask their thermal profiles, water lapping quietly around her body. Valor didn't hesitate, sinking into the cold water without complaint. They moved like one organism, seamlessly attuned to each other. The forest seemed alive with tension. Shadows stretched unnaturally long. Every rustle of leaves, every subtle flicker of movement in the tree line made Riley pause, analyze, and advance only when the path was clear. Her heart rate remained controlled, her focus sharp, her decisions deliberate. This was no chase for sport. It was survival. Valor stayed at her side, ever vigilant, a trained teammate whose instincts complemented her own. Together, they became a moving pattern of deception and endurance, staying one step ahead of unseen hunters. While the night itself held its breath, Riley moved through the dense forest with practiced ease, her body low, senses tuned to every sound. Every shift of air, moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting fragmented shadows that she used to mask her presence. Valor stayed tight against her side, ears swiveling constantly, muscles coiled. As they advanced, memories she had long buried began to surface, fragments that made her pulse tighten and her mind sharpen. She had not always been Riley Quinn, the technician who disappeared into the mountains. Once, she had been Staff Sergeant Riley Cole, married to Captain Eli Cole, working as a specialist on advanced aircraft systems. 5 years ago, she had accompanied her husband on a brief technical inspection overseas. A routine mission, or so it seemed. The memory of that day arrived in fragments: the low hum of the test facility, the smell of jet fuel mixed with ozone, and then the sudden, violent pulse of the Icarus prototype as it detonated without warning. The site they believed empty had been populated. She remembered the heat, the shockwave slamming through her, and her desperate dive into a drainage ditch to survive. The pain had been overwhelming. Officially, she had been declared dead. A covert rescue had saved her, orchestrated by a former intelligence contact who ensured she disappeared. Rebuilt, and assumed a new identity. No rank, no clearance, no command, just survival, just searching, just piecing together the puzzle her husband had begun to uncover. Every field report, every maintenance log, every old encrypted note he had hidden in shared caches had been a breadcrumb leading her to this moment. And now it was all coming together. The aircraft she had discovered was not a coincidence. Every dot was connecting, every hidden message falling into place. Riley realized the truth of her existence. Now survival was never enough. She had been preparing for this moment all along. The people hunting her, the black-clad teams, the drones. None of them knew who she really was. They thought they were tracking a witness, a shadow. They did not know she had already lost everything and come back stronger. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a calculated force, moving through the forest, with purpose, ready to meet whatever came with the precision of someone trained to survive and the determination of someone who had been forged in loss. Her chest rose and fell steadily. Valor pressed close, sensing her resolve. The forest around them was quiet, but Riley felt the weight of her reclaimed identity and the clarity of her mission. She was ready. They were walking into the wrong prey. Riley crouched behind a low ridge, heart steady, hands moving deliberately as she powered up the hidden uplink device. The mobile hotspot, routed through a civilian satellite connection, blinked green as she began transmitting the decrypted contents of the SSD drive. Captain Eli Cole's final video log streamed simultaneously to multiple recipients: a federal oversight contact, a military ethics watchdog group, and a small independent veterans news channel known for uncovering Black Ops abuse. Each transfer was confirmed silently on her encrypted display. And she didn't wait for acknowledgement. Time had run out. The black-clad team was moving fast, sweeping the forest for any sign of her. A faint glint of light through the trees caught her eye. She shifted slightly, trying to assess without giving herself away. Then, more lights appeared, swinging between the trunks. A small news crew had arrived, handheld cameras rolling before Riley even realized they were there. The tension in the air tightened. She could see the operators tense, rifles raised, scanning the illuminated area. Moments later, a figure in a federal marshal uniform emerged from the undergrowth, striding forward with authority. Her voice cut through the quiet, crisp and commanding, freezing the armed operators in place. She raised a folder high, an injunction signed by a federal judge ordering the immediate release of any U.S. citizen being detained without proper authorization. The black-clad team paused, weapons still trained, but the cameras captured every second, one by one. They lowered their rifles, reassessing the situation. Riley didn't move. She remained standing, dirt smudged across her face. Valor at her side, his presence grounding her. Her breathing stayed calm, measured. Each inhale deliberate. The forest around them seemed to exhale with her. The danger mitigated not by force, but by planning and the law. The files she had sent were already out of reach, and the truth had made it into the hands of those who could act. The moment was quiet yet undeniable. Justice had arrived in an unassuming, procedural way. Riley's gaze swept the area, observing the halted operators, the cameras rolling, and the marshal asserting authority. She didn't run. She didn't gesture. She simply stood, resolute, letting the stillness carry the weight of her mission. Valor pressed close, silent and vigilant, sharing in the awareness of what had just shifted. In that pause, Riley knew the balance had tipped, and the truth could no longer be buried. The morning air at Arlington National Cemetery was crisp, and still at 7:15 a.m., rows of headstones caught the first light of day, their white surfaces glowing softly against the manicured grass. Captain Eli Cole's casket rested at the center of a small clearing, draped in the American flag. An honor guard stood motionless, rifles held at precise angles, their posture unwavering as the chaplain spoke of service, sacrifice, and integrity. His voice carrying with calm authority across the silent crowd. When the rifle team fired the 3-volley salute, the echoes rolled through the grounds. A bugler played taps, the notes lingering, solemn and deliberate. Riley stood nearby in full dress uniform, her posture formal but steady. The scars along her neck and collarbone were visible now, no longer hidden beneath a collar. Around her neck hung 2 sets of dog tags, hers and Eli's. Valor sat rigidly at her side, ears alert, eyes scanning, embodying discipline and quiet loyalty. As the folded flag was presented, she reached out with measured hands, accepting it with grace. No words were exchanged, only a shared recognition between soldier and honor guard. A nod that carried the weight of years and unspoken understanding. After the crowd dispersed, Riley remained alone. She knelt at the grave, placing the worn photograph she had recovered from the aircraft beside the headstone. The image showed her and Eli in Afghanistan, younger, smiling, a time when the world had seemed simpler. The inscription read, Captain Eli Cole, Defender of Truth, Ultimate Sacrifice. She let her fingers linger over the photo, the flag, and the cold stone, absorbing the gravity of the moment. Valor stayed close, steadfast. The scene was quiet, reverent, and unsentimental. Each gesture, from the flag to the dog's unwavering presence, spoke for itself. There was no closure, only acknowledgement and respect. The weight of the past rested heavily, but it was honored. Riley rose slowly, straightening her uniform, and for a moment, simply breathed, letting the morning sun and the silence hold the memory of a life sacrificed and a truth finally recognized. Weeks after the funeral, Riley stepped into her new office at the Pentagon at 8:30 a.m., her posture straight, hair uniform crisp. The Department of Defense had formally restored her rank and identity, but more than that, she had been entrusted with something unprecedented: leadership of a newly established division focused on military ethics and internal oversight. Its mission was clear: investigate black budget projects, enforce accountability across all branches, and protect those who dared to expose wrongdoing. She moved through the space, surveying the team she had assembled, A former JAG prosecutor stood at a console, reviewing legal documentation. A combat medic turned analyst scanned field reports, cross-referencing operational logs. A cyber intelligence officer with deep clearance monitored encrypted feeds and communications. Each member had been chosen for expertise, integrity, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Their first assignment already awaited a high-priority case with echoes of Project Icarus, a reminder of the cost of silence. Riley settled at her desk, Valor lying calmly at her feet, alert but relaxed. Her eyes rested on the photo behind her desk, showing the Afghan village as it had existed before destruction. Beneath it, a simple plaque read, "Truth doesn't need rank, just courage." She exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle evenly across her shoulders. She no longer carried vengeance. She carried purpose. A soft knock brought her attention to the door. Captain Wheeler, her second in command, stepped in, ready to brief her on the initial steps of the investigation. Riley nodded, gathering the case file with measured precision. Her hands were steady, her mind focused, every motion deliberate. Before heading to the briefing room, she passed a small group of new recruits waiting quietly. One young female SEAL candidate stepped forward, eyes bright, and silently acknowledged Riley. She smiled, letting the weight of her own journey inform the gesture. She spoke softly but firmly, words that had guided her through darkness. Honor the oath, not just the orders. As she entered the conference room, files in hand and Valor by her side, Riley felt a sense of forward motion, a mission renewed. The past had shaped her, but the future was hers to define. It was not an ending. It was a beginning, steady, deliberate, and guided by courage.